Alrighty, folks. Today we are doing something a little different. We are looking at a tier list of the heroes, specifically my opinions on how they stack up against each other in the ranked Bronze 1 region. Hopefully we're able to push out of that pretty comfortably this week, but specifically for the Bronze and lower and casual games, who you should be picking, who you should be playing, who's the strongest. I'm happy to say that the meta has shifted away from the pure on hit that it was a couple weeks ago. We are now on the version 0.19.1 patch, which is good. Wanted to get a tier list out here because it looks like we're going to be probably about 4 weeks out to a month out from receiving the next update. So these rankings will be viable for a while, and we've been on this patch we've been on the 0.19 patch for over a week now, so I've got a good feel of which heroes are the strongest. I've done some research on win rates, and I've watched some other tier list videos from some larger creators and some people that are streaming it, and I think we've got a good feel now of where everyone kind of balances out in the current meta. Now, I'm happy to say that tanks are a little bit back. They've buffed tank items. They've nerfed a lot of the attack speed items, and it's really just a better meta overall. We'll go through these tiers real quick, and then we'll, instead of going straight down the line, I'm going to give you all my top 4 for every role first, because I figure a lot of people are hopping onto these videos just so they can see who should I play, who's the strongest. So we're going to front load it with the top 4 from each role, and then at the end we'll look at and adjust people around if we think anybody needs to move. So first things first, let's go through these tiers that we've got set up. We've got S tier, must pick or ban. That's pretty straightforward. In ranked, if somebody on your team doesn't want to play them, you probably want to ban them because these heroes are just too strong. Probably not going to put too many in this category. I think they've done a good job, especially following the version 0.19.1 patch, the little small patch that they added on to the 0.19. I think they've done a good job of bringing most of the heroes that were super powerful down. So not looking at having too many in this tier. A tier is happy to see picked on my team specifically. Heroes that I expect a good performance from. I see consistently performing in matches at a higher rate than most. B tier, which is the above average. Players that I'm still happy to see picked, but maybe not quite as strong as the A tier. C tier, consistent performers. This is the middle of the pack. Probably going to be filling out the B and C tier with most of these heroes because, like I said, they've kept it nice and balanced. They've pulled a lot of the lower ones up and nerfed a lot of the higher end ones down. So expect to see a lot here. D1 specifically is the lower end picks. Picks I'm not as happy to see my team take. Picks that I'm expecting a lower end performance from, as compared to the D2 tier, which is also heroes that I'm kind of not optimistic about seeing a good performance from, but if they're a one-trick type of player, or that's their main and they've got tons of hours on that player, they can perform well above this category. So you just never know. There's a lot of heroes that are hard to play or have a huge skill gap. So if there's any that I think can be exceptionally strong but are hard to use, they'll go into his D2 tier. And then the F tier, which is need buffs, not really as viable as I'd like right now, or doesn't have a good place in this meta. So once again, the meta that we're kind of in is no longer the on hit. It's still a time to kill meta. It's still a very burst based meta. Right now the goal for most heroes is dump CC on whichever opponent hero in the team fight is the biggest threat, and then everyone blast them with all their damage and take them out quick. Time to kill is still very fast, especially if you're not building armor, but some of the tankier heroes can survive better in team fights than they could just a couple weeks ago. So we're going to get right into it with our top 4 for every role, and then we'll fill out the rest of the list and give you our opinions as we go. So we're going to start with jungle here. And we got a nice little top 4 junglers lined up. We'll go in the order that they appear here. So first off, a lot of people are not going to be too happy about this. If you play on the higher end, you would probably say that Grux isn't one of the top 4 junglers, but in the Bronze 1 range of ranked, he is exceptionally strong. Even after those nerfs he got in the previous patch, we're going to put him in A tier here. I'm happy to see a Grux picked on my team consistently. In the Bronze 1 range, he is getting banned quite a bit, but not quite as strong as he was to go into the S tier. Just a good overall jungler, fast, clear, easy to get going, easy to catch people out. He can be susceptible to not having an escape, but if you save your blink and either blink in and then save your dash or whatever you've got to do, he can perform exceptionally well in the jungle and not difficult at all to play. So definitely an easy top 4 and an easy A tier pick for us. Next up, Chimera. Now Chimera, realistically, he could go into the S tier. I'm actually going to put him in the S tier here. Not because you would really ever ban him, but just because if you're looking for a jungler in this competitive range, in the bronze range, or in casual matches, he can easily get out of hand. We've played multiple games in the last week where the other team's Chimera just goes up early, and in the bronze range where your team isn't as coordinated or planning to save their CC for him, he can just snowball. He can take 1v2s, he can take 1v3s if he's over leveled, and just keep that health regen stacked. And if people are missing abilities or they're not hitting CC on him, he's going to snowball. So we'll put him in S tier for now. May end up shifting him down to A tier at the end. We'll see how that looks, but definitely an elite jungler. Super easy to play, not too many drawbacks to him. Can solo Fangtooth, can solo Orb Prime. Just a huge asset to have on your team. And going through here, we've got Zarus. I think Zarus for sure has to be in our top 4 junglers. We're going to put him in A tier here behind Grux. He's a little bit more difficult to play, or at least to get the most out of his kit. But at the same time, very strong kit, very good ultimate, good mobility and shiftiness in team fights. And if you're playing in solo lane or something, and the Zarus jungler comes out, and you're not in a good position, you're as good as done. Also a very snowbally hero. If he gets his stacks up late game, he can just be unstoppable. So good build diversity options. And it's got to be in our top 4 junglers. And last in our top 4 junglers, even after the nerfs, we've got to say Aurora. Aurora's time to clear jungle camps isn't as overpowered as it was. I think in the last 2 patches in a row, she's got nerfs to her damage to camps, or her damage to minions in general, but still an exceptionally strong jungler, performs well into the late game. When you get into those team fights, she can put big damage on multiple people and CC whole groups at once. So, and in great mobility with the gliding on the ice and forming the wall, she can cut off routes. She can, cause big disruptions. She can cut off if she jumps into solo lane or jumps into duo lane. She can divide players from where they want to be. So, gotta be in our top 4 junglers. And that's the top 4 for jungle. I think that's pretty good. We'll see at the end how many are in S tier, but I don't really think Chimera is going to come out of it. He's just too easy to play for what you get. Offers you too many options with the soloing Fangtooth early, and stacking up that regen in group fights and stuff. If he's the first one to a team fight and he takes a first player out and still has his ult, you're in trouble. You probably just have to bail out of that team fight. So that's going to do it for jungle. Carries. We'll do carries next. I think carries are one of the more distinct roles for who's the strongest right now. Looking at win rates, we've had Sparrow as a ridiculously high win rate for a long time. Now that we're not in the pure on-hit meta, we're not going to put her in S tier. I think she is very strong, but not quite a must-pick her ban, although you will see her banned quite a bit in the Bronze 1 range, because people just don't want to deal with her, specifically a Sparrow phase combo or something like that. She's relatively easy to play, even though she doesn't have an escape ability per se. Just puts out big damage and fits well in the meta with her passive. So Sparrow's got to be in here. I think she'll probably be an A tier. I doubt she gets moved from there for now. A character I could easily see getting nerfed into a lower tier just because her kit isn't exceptionally special. It's just she has a good passive and fits with the current builds that people are going with. So next up, I would say we got to include Drongo. Drongo, after these most recent patches and the enhancements to crit, Drongo is a lot better. Has a decent ultimate for hitting in team fights and staying on the edge of team fights. Has the silence, has one of the best clears or wave pressure abilities with the old rusty boomerang. Just an incredible carry right now. And with the bug fixes and everything, I think he's clearly one of the top 4. So, looking down, what else we've got in here? I think we've got to get Murdoch up here. Murdoch is one that everybody's going to have him. So in this Bronze 1 range and the casual matches, people have had time to play with him and figure him out. He has incredibly good 1v1 potential. I would say we actually probably need to put him in the above average tier. He's not like ridiculously broken. He's just a good carry to see. Universal presence with the ult. Not a lot of drawbacks. High skill cap for sure if you're good at dropping the mines on people's feet, or you're good at hitting the ultimate or keeping vision around the map and hitting the ultimate when people need it. Good to deal out damage late, good to build crit on. Definitely like to see him on my team, but not quite on the tier, I would say, of Sparrow and Drongo. Doesn't really strike as much fear as seeing a Sparrow hit her ult during a team fight would. So great carry, but carries in general are a little bit more balanced now, so we'll keep him in the B tier. And finally, I would say this may not be much of a surprise, but Grim has got to go in the S tier. Grim is just an absolute menace. He's got the nerfs to him recently, which makes me think maybe he should be an A tier, but the nerfs didn't change the fact that this guy's kit is just incredibly strong. Really good passive. Any passive like his and Sparrow's that just give you more damage with your autos with no strings attached is incredible. Has the assault mode, so as long as he's got mana and he turns that assault mode on, you are in danger. If he's hitting his shots, you're not getting away from him because of the slow stacking, and the autos are going to hit for so much harder early game than almost any other carry can do. In my opinion, if you don't have somebody on your team planning to play him, you should probably ban him just in case, because you come against someone who's experienced with Grim or just hits every auto, there's really nothing you can do about it. With the spell shield ability that he's got in this meta, being able to avoid CC like that, Faye drops an ult on him, or Grux is going to go for a pull on him, or whatever jungler is going to go for the gank, and he hits that spell shield and just immunes it. It's just, he fits perfectly into this meta right now. Good build diversity options on him. You can build magical damage items on him and get extra pressure out of him. He has an ult that is inescapable and hits extremely hard late game. So, gotta be in an S tier. I think he's definitely not as good as he was. The nerfs did help, and the assault mode does cost a lot of mana to keep up, but if you see a Grim that's got mana, he's hard to push, he's hard to take down, and you definitely can't get away from him. So that's going to do it for our top 4 carries. Now we'll look at mid laners. Mid lane is kind of the role where I think more of the heroes are kind of balanced. I'm going to give you the top 4 here first, but realistically the top 6 are all pretty close to each other, and then after that the weaker ones aren't really that like weak. They're not, probably won't be down here very much. So looking at our top 4, gonna show some bias here off the bat, but Iggy and Scorch, I think even after the nerfs in the version 0.19.1, where his turrets got a little bit less health, and then the version before that where his ultimate got a lot less damage, still just an incredible hero. You know, lets you control the team fights better, lets you control your lane very well. Just good opportunities. Can't build him full damage per se. You want to build on ability proc items on him for sure, but does very good in this meta where he can just doesn't burst people down, but can just put out so much consistent damage that whenever your team gets in a team fight, or your jungler comes in, or whatever it may be, he's going to be there, and you know he's going to be putting out massive damage. So Iggy and Scorch got to be up here. I've played him a lot. I think he's very good, very consistent, and definitely happy to see him. Now, as far as who else is going to go up here in this high tier, I think Morgash, I'm going to go ahead and put her up here. We may shift her down out of the S tier by the end of this, but Morgash, when you're playing in this Bronze 1 range, I vote to ban her pretty often because she can just be an absolute threat. Not the most insane mobility, but you let her get a couple kills early and then her damage is just inescapable. Has good matchups against a lot of other carries. You know, when you're building Megacosm, World Breaker on her, the tick damage that she's putting out is so ridiculous. 1 mark followed by 1 hive burst, and she can take a third of your health as an opponent mid laner. So great for poke, great for team fights, and an ult that's inescapable and can just finish off tanks when they're not expecting it. So gonna go up here in the S tier for now, but we'll see if we want to adjust her here later. Next, I don't think we can really do a top mid laners tier list without getting Gideon up here. Gideon, we're gonna put him in A tier. His kit is just, he did receive the nerfs. The ultimate's not quite as good, but just the nature of his kit and the damage that he can output is crazy. I don't see them being able to nerf him into a much lower tier because he just, even without the damage, even if they took the damage numbers by 10% on all of his abilities, the fact that he's got that teleport out is so strong. Such good mobility, the best escape in the mid lane by far. Great team fight presence, great objective fight presence with his ult, and can just consistently poke for big damage with his short cooldowns on the meteor drop. You definitely are happy to see him picked on your team, and you're not expecting it to be someone who has to be super good with Gideon to make a difference in the team. You know, he can just be an average Gideon player, and as long as he's hitting a couple abilities and saving that ult for when it matters, you're going to be happy to see him on your team. Next, we're going to go with Faye as our last of the top 4. Faye is kind of the sleeper pick, but based off of her win rates, I tell you, she's got an absurdly high win rate. I don't think people realize that. She just has a good set of abilities for this meta. Great CC potential with the ult, with the slowdown. Great poke potential and spam potential with her little shot that refills your mana if you land it, and stacks up even more damage. And if you know where people are going to be in team fights, you can just hit it on them back to back and just burn people down. Good clear, good lane presence. Not good mobility. She can get caught out easy for sure, but I think the win rates being such an overperformer on Faye, we've got to have her up here. Could potentially be in the B tier maybe, but like I said, I think most of the mages are kind of well balanced and will be in this B tier anyway. So just to distinguish her, we're going to keep her in the A tier for now. Happy to see a Faye picked on my team, but it does sometimes spook me because if she gets behind early without any sort of escapability, then she could get farmed. So you got to play cautiously, but in team fights, one of the most elite performers. Definitely look forward to seeing her on my team in the team fight stage of matches. So that's going to do it for the mid laners. We'll look at off laners here real quick. Top 4. Some of these probably are not going to be surprising to you at all. We're going to start with Quang, and we're actually going to put Quang in the B tier, above average. A lot of people would say he's higher right now. A lot of people play him in jungle. I think with his recent mixture of nerfs and buffs, a lot of late game buffs, I would say, he can perform well into the late game and still does decent in the early game. Just difficult to play against in off lane. You know, if I'm being honest, offers a lot of CC and lockdown potential, offers a lot of just passive damage that's going to be coming off of him. Doing all the magical damage while still swinging for strong auto attacks. Gives you a nice mix in the off lane. You can build him tanky. He doesn't have issues with getting bursted down too fast. And good mobility too on top of it. So one of those where if you learn to play him, you can do extremely well with him and annoy your offlaner, your opponent offlaner quite a bit. But may take some getting used to for some people. And he still has a good potential to play jungle for sure. So we'll keep him in this upper range for now. Next, well, we'll go ahead and talk about someone who's already up here, Grux. Yes, people have been saying Grux isn't the best in jungle, Grux doesn't have the best engaged, this, that, or the other. Grux's jungle camp clear is extremely fast. The pull hitting people followed by immediately stunning them with his ult can just delete people in the early game. And doesn't have insane mobility, but the dash can catch people out when they're trying to escape, which is really all that you're looking for in most of your jungle situations. So despite the recent nerfs, I think Grux is still a top 4 jungler, as well as a top 4 offlaner. So the rate that he's going to be clearing wave is going to compete for sure with most other offlaners, and the fact that he's going to guarantee land his abilities when he does that pull, it makes it frustrating to play against in the off lane for sure. So he's going to stay up here, top of A range for sure. Borderline, without a doubt, but after the recent nerfs, he can't quite be in S tier, despite the fact he can play multiple roles very well. Next, again, some people are not going to like this, but we're going to do Greystone. We're going to put him actually in B tier. I would put him at the very top of B tier, but we got him organized by roles right now, so we'll just leave him right here in B tier. Greystone, as much as I'm biased towards him and want him to be in the A tier, he doesn't bring anything incredibly special in his kit aside from his ult. So in offlane, you're gonna have great clear. It's actually surprising to me that they buffed the make way here recently, because he already has incredible clear. You're going to outclear a lot of offlaners depending on what you build first item, and very safe with the jump. You know, has good range, has to slow down autos, and of course has the ult to keep him in the fight and bait out abilities if he needs to. Can stay in lane longer than most with that ult, and really just a top performer. I want to put him in A tier because he's so easy to play and so consistent, but we'll leave him here in the above average. He just doesn't bring like a hard CC or anything crazy, which is really what you need in this meta, and his abilities don't deal like a huge chunk of burst damage. So not quite enough to break A tier, but an above average performer every single time. I mean, you love to see him. Not as strong in jungle anymore because he's got so much competition in jungle. I mean, you've got Aurora, Grux, Chimera. He's not going to compete with those in jungle, but very strong in off lane and good in the team fight stage late game. And finally, new on the block, Terra. Despite the nerfs, she is definitely in S tier. Must pick or ban Terra. you don't really see her banned ever because everyone's trying to pick her. She can play off lane so well, she fits the meta so well. Consistent CC, shield for team fights or for trading in off lane, a root or a slowdown at range with her throwing axe. I mean, and just great clear with her 1. So everything that you want in an offlaner, everything that you want to bring to the team fights late game, an ultimate that makes her CC immune for an extended amount of time is just incredible in a meta where everyone's goal is to dump all their CC on whoever's the biggest threat. Well, if Terra's the biggest threat on your team and she bullied offlane the whole game, dumping all your CC on her in the team fight's not going to do anything. She's going to just march towards your back line and be able to stun lock them and put huge damage on them. So Terra, just an incredibly strong kit. They've already nerfed her. I wouldn't be surprised if they nerf her again in a few aspects, but very strong pick. Even after the version 0.19.1, gotta pick her banner. I mean, and I don't think it comes in as much of a surprise to anyone. She's been getting played in jungle. She's been getting played in support. You know, just all around great kit and a top performer without a doubt. So that's going to do it for the offlaners. Good mix in here. Probably not going to be seeing too many more physical damage or mages jump up into these high tiers. We pretty much got it covered. But last for our top 4, we're going to do support. We're going to start with Decker. Decker is just, she's just got the kit. I mean, she's got the kit. The fact that you've got the stun, you've got the shield drop, you've got good lane pressure and damage to clear waves. Just really a kit that you like to see. Not an incredibly overpowered passive or anything, but someone that you want. I'm very happy to see picked. If I'm playing carry, I'm happy to see a Decker as support. Somewhat skill shot based on hitting the stun, but if you're decent hitting the stun, you're going to bring so much to the team that Decker simply has to be an A tier. Next, probably my favorite or one of the easiest to play, Steel. We'll put him in A tier just because you have so many options that you've got with him, but Steel, very strong. I mean, basically every ability that he's got is hitting with CC, and huge team fight presence, high skill gap with putting up his force shield, and his ult can absolutely disrupt backliners or change the plans of team fights significantly. I've put up a couple of videos playing support Steel, and I always seem to have a good time with him, even though I'm not someone who's super experienced as support or a support main or anything like that. So Steel's got to be up here. Strong. I'm always happy to see him picked on my team, and I'm always worried when I see him picked on the other team. So early game to late game, huge presence from Steel. Got to be an A tier. Next up, we will actually look at someone who's already up here, which is Terra. Terra's just kit is so strong. Lends herself better to offlane for sure, but if you have a Terra at playing at support and she's bullying and helping the lane clear go faster, has a lot of options to catch people out. And as far as tanky supports go, definitely one of the top ends. You know, you could try to play Greystone at support for the tankiness, but realistically, the armors that she gets from her ult as the passive, and the multiple CC opportunities she has if she's got her root ready on the throwing axe, or if she's just going to stun them with the knock up from her shield dash, very strong at support. There's a lot of supports that you could try to say are up here in this top 4 tier that I'm not placing, like Muriel, but, you know, just a very different playstyle than someone like Decker. More of a tank frontliner support, which depending on your comp is what you need. So right up here above Steel for sure, even though I would say Steel is very good. And then finally, yeah, this is definitely just particular to how I would say the supports are in the bronze 1 tier, but Phase is hard to deal with if you don't have your carry and support coordinated. If you don't know that you got to get outside of that beam, she's landing roots on you and giving her carry big opportunity to put damage on you and poke consistently. The range on that beam is really strong. The safety that she offers when comboed with some of the more meta supports or carries right now. I mean, obviously the Phase Sparrow combo is legendary at how strong it is, because Sparrow doesn't have the escape ability, but Phase can link to her and keep her in a safer position. The Flashbang to disorient people in team fights or in the laning phase. Just a strong overall support. Not exceptionally stronger than some of the supports that didn't make it onto this top 4 list, but an above average performer in about every game that I see her, and very frustrating to play against if they get ahead early, because she has good poke potential similar to Decker. So that's our top 4 for every role. Now we'll go through here a little bit quicker and just fill out the rest of this list with where I think these heroes go. And we'll just go straight down the run here, starting with Countess. So Countess, I would say she's a consistent performer. If you're exceptionally good with her, you can get more out of her. In jungle, more than mid lane. Mid lane, she's not that great, doesn't have the best range. A lot of these other mages that you'll be playing with in mid lane will be able to outrange and outpoke you, but does have an ultimate that locks on and locks someone down for a long period of time. If you can get that off in a Chimera or on their carry in a team fight, you can make a big difference, but just a consistent performer, not much more. Crunch, I would say Crunch is also a consistent performer. Takes a little bit of getting used to. If you're a higher skill player, you could definitely boost him up these tiers because he has a very long CC combo, but when you compare him to Terra and how Terra interacts in most situations that you would like to see Grux, whether it's jungle or off lane, I would prefer Terra in all of those situations. Just does the job better, but still a very nice combo-oriented offlaner. Even in offlane, I would probably rather play Steel over him most of the time, because the AoE late game presence is going to be a little bit better than Crunch, who's going to fall off in scenarios where he can't isolate somebody and land his combos on them. Feng Mao, we'll go with Feng Mao, also a consistent performer. He was a little bit stronger before. I would say he's clearly in B tier before he got these recent nerfs. Maybe even up in A tier if you're exceptionally good with him. But now that he's got these nerfs, you're not as excited to see him on your team as you would be. You really don't want to see him in off lane too much because he doesn't have insane clear compared to some of the better off laners. And the mobility is just kind of hit or miss, because if he uses his mobility to get in, he can't get back out. And at the same time, even though he has the shield, unless he's got a build going with mana regen, he's not going to be able to stand on the front line and keep spamming that shield. So the Execute ultimate is good, but it's better in the mid to late game than the fully late game, so just a consistent performer. Gadget is well above... Oh, we grabbed Rafe. Gadget is well above average. Doesn't quite break into the tier of happy to see her in every game, but the tick damage is her really only downfall. Her poke is great with the mine. Her little force line that stops people, it roots people that are running at her, is just okay. Can only hit one person, so that's the biggest problem with it. You can't really group CC people with it. But the ult is very big, and it does let you contest objectives very well, or lock down inhibitors, or whatever you need to do. So, and her damage numbers are up there, for sure up there with Faye and Gideon, for how much damage she can put out in a short period of time. Relatively safe. If you've got your abilities ready and a jungler jumps on you, you can just drop all your abilities at your feet, and even though it's not going to stop the jungler, it is going to put a lot of hurt on them, so well above average performer. Now we're at Rafe. Rafe has got to go in the one trick and situational category. He's just not that strong right now. They've been giving him some buffs to make him a little bit better, and he can be extremely good if you're very practiced with him, but you don't really want to take him into the carry role unless you're coordinating with your support and you're going to have a support that's doing, a lot of physical damage and has a lot of CC to help him out. And you don't really want to take him into the mid lane role because a lot of the mid laners that he would be competing with are just going to outperform him so heavily early game that he's going to be behind. So if you're exceptionally good with him, he's a good one-trick option. Maybe if you're in a 5-stack and you're talking to each other, you could have a phase that gives you really good value with his warding and his, his ultimate backing people up and stuff like that. But very, very situational, very one-trick based. Howitzer's above average. He definitely was a contender for our top 4 because he can put that long-range damage on people. He can poke effectively and clear effectively in lane. And then in team fights, he can hit big AoE damage, and has good peel, has good slowdown with his mines. His ult can keep him relatively safe because it lasts for so long, so he can go up there and get away from junglers quite easy. But overall, just not quite as strong, and a little bit of a learning curve before you can really get the most out of him compared to somebody like Gideon or Faye or Iggy. Contender with Faye for sure on damage output, or Gideon with damage output, pure damage at the end game, but can get caught out easily. And if you're behind and you're just relying on the pushback mine, you better be good with that pushback mine to push yourself away and also push the jungler away that's jumping on you, or else you're going to get shut down on him. Kallari. I've seen some Kallaris go off. Don't get me wrong, I've seen some Kallaris that go off and can absolutely delete people. So, yeah, we're going to leave her in the one-trick and situational category for now, because the potential is there for her to harass an offlaner and keep them behind, or hit her ult that hits both duo laners and just chunk their health down. But her clear in jungle is so abysmal that unless you've come up with some way to clear jungle faster with her, or some tech that they let you farm more efficiently, she really cannot keep up in the early game. There's just no way she can keep up in the early game. So, gotta be a one-trick or situational. If you're good with her, you're good with her, but, that's asking a lot. Kira. Now, Kira, tempted to put her in A tier for sure, but we're going to put her in B tier, more along line with Murdoch for sure. Just strong abilities overall, good team fight presence with her ult, good lane presence with her poke and tick damage, and kind of just a middle of the pack carry at the end of the day. You're happy to see her picked, and she is going to perform consistently, but just slightly above average, slightly above some of the lower end carries. Doesn't bring anything too crazy special, like a big CC ability or any sort of damage immunity type stuff like Grim has. So middle of the pack carry for sure. Belica. Belica. I'm tempted to put her in the needs buffs category. And it's actually realistically been a long time since I've seen Belica go off. So she's not the worst hero in the game, even though she may end up being the lowest on this tier list. But she just doesn't have a role right now that I really am comfortable with saying. I mean, maybe we put her in lower end picks for right now because, the needs buff category I don't feel like is too fair to many of these heroes. She is usable, but in support you're just not going to get that much out of her, not nearly as much as you could get out of Decker or someone like that who's going to have better CC abilities, better lockdown and harass abilities. And then in mid lane, you're not going to be able to compete with these other mid laners. I mean, maybe if you're exceptionally good, you still do have the ability to hit hit your full combo of abilities on one person and probably delete them once you get stacked up with some items. but her passive doesn't do anything for you until at least the middle of the game, and just doesn't really have the kit right now. Definitely, I would say, does need buffs to move up to the middle of the pack, but just a lower end pick overall. Actually, we'll put her in the needs buffs. I don't think she really has a role to play most of the time in matches. Muriel, we're going to put her in consistent performer in the tier that I play in Bronze 1 right now. She's just okay after the nerfs. She was very strong before the nerfs, don't get me wrong, but she's really just okay after the nerfs. The Global Presence ultimate is nice, but it is on a longer cooldown now, and she no longer really has enough damage output to play solo lane, so really just has to play support, preferably in a support that you're communicating with. Does have good poke and clear and safety for sure, especially with the ult. She can jump out of situations that she's in that are looking like she's going to get taken down, but not quite as strong as she was just a couple weeks ago, where she could play off lane. She was doing so much damage. Narbash. Narbash was stronger before. I don't know why it's being so glitchy there. Narbash was stronger before. I would say a couple weeks ago he was easily in the A tier just because of his late game presence. But and then after that, when we went to the full on hit meta, he got a little bit lower because he could just get deleted too fast. Now we're gonna put him in just the consistent performer tier. The idea of Narbash is good, but at the end of the day, he's got a skill shot stun that isn't as good as Decker's, and he's got a healing ability in a meta where you're not going to get that much use out of it because heroes are getting deleted so fast, and your key heroes that you don't want to get deleted, the healing's not going to save. You need a shield like Muriel shields or something to save them. Post team fight or during a long objective fight like a Orb Prime, he can be very good. Late game he can still be very good, but it seems like his ultimate he just gets canceled out of too fast because so many heroes are rocking CC abilities. So many heroes with CC abilities are the ones that are getting picked and prioritized, that if somebody sees him hitting his ult and they've got something to knock him out of it, they're going to try to knock him out of it. And the speed boost is just okay. I mean, you've got starter items that's final tier can give you a speed boost that's not as good but still usable. So just a consistent performer, not nearly overpowered as I'd like to see. Rampage. I think Rampage is better than he was, for sure, but he still has a rough pick rate and win rate, and he doesn't offer as much as some of these guys like Grux or Zarus goes. We're going to put him in the lower end picks. Trust me, I would rather see Rampage up here. I miss the days in Paragon where Rampage was just incredibly strong and a threat, and you hated seeing him come out of jungle. But I don't really ever see anyone using Rampage in such a way that I'm scared of him, in this meta where you can just CC him and then burst him with a ton of damage from your mid laner or your jungler. He's not as scary as you would like to see. Maybe there'll be some builds that come out following all these tank items that got buffed where he gets a little bit better. But tank junglers just aren't the meta right now because of the way people are getting blown up. Now he has good CC with the rock throw, and he has decent clear, and he's got great sustain in the jungle, but just a lower end pick. I'm not exactly excited to see a Rampage on my team. I've just got to hope that he's good at hitting the rock throw. And the wind up on the rock throw makes it a little bit more frustrating of a skill shot to hit than, say a Decker stun or something like that. Or even a Narbash stun, because you got that long load up time. So, just a lower end pick right now. Revenant. Now, I've played some games recently where Revenant has went off. And the crit buffs do help him, but realistically, we've got to put him in as a lower end pick. In the Bronze 1 category, you're just not going to see I mean, realistically, we'll put him in the one-trick situational category because if you are very good with him, he can delete people. If you make the right decisions with your ult and pull someone out of the fight that's really important that you can 1v1, or that you're just ahead of in build order, you can take them out and it'll massively swing the team fight on your team's advantage because it's going to pull you out of the fight for safety as well. So, and it's good gold gain, and if he's able to start snowballing, his snowball is going to get bigger faster than most people. So, a good hero in certain situations, but struggles early game for sure. That little clear ability where he sends out the phantoms and hits is just okay. It's not exceptional. And I think he does fit better in this meta of building than he did just a couple weeks ago when crit was much worse, but still not a top performer, not a consistent performer at all. I would love to put him in this consistent performer tier, but he's like the definition of inconsistent. So, Richter, he got the buffs recently, but we got to put him in lower end picks. You know, he is, I mean, realistically, he could fit in this one-trick category without a doubt, because if you're just really good at hitting the Richter pull, you can change the game and you can win your team games just by hitting one Richter pull. But most of the time, that's not going to happen, if we're being honest. Not at this tier of competitive or casual matches. He's kind of a lower-end pick. You don't want to take him into jungle, because you have too many other good jungle options, and his clear is going to be so slow that it's going to be hard to keep up. But good set of abilities. It doesn't necessarily need too many buffs to be much better. You know, probably deserves to be in the one-trick and situational category. We'll put him there because he just does have the potential to win you games. But I don't really know how you buff him to move him up the tiers without making him broken, you know, especially at high tier play, because the grab is just so strong, and the fact that he can combo it straight into his ult, it's basically just a game ender for someone. So Seraph, I would say, is probably above average. She's got the potential to play solo effectively, got the potential to play jungle more effectively, good mobility, good disruption, is able to stick to people well. Just an all-around good kit as far as an auto attacker goes. Can contest abilities very effectively, like contest objectives effectively, like Fangtooth. Can get out of fights well if she's over her head. Just an overall above-average auto attacker for jungle, or if you're very good with her and want to play her in solo, she can do that effectively too. So, not too complicated, just a decent jungler / solo. Sevrog, I want to put him in the one-trick situational category because I have seen him go off very effectively, and I do like using him. But I certainly can't put him in the consistent performer category because he's not easy to play. You've got to focus on getting your stacks up. They've made it easier in the last couple patches to get your stacks up with how cheap his abilities are on mana and how fast they come off of cooldown. But at the end of the day, he's a lower end pick. He's got top end potential for sure if the game goes really late, but that's the only time where you're really happy to see a Sevrog on your team, is, you know, after the 30-minute mark when he's all stacked up. And he does bring good CC to the fight, decent escapability or engage, and he can disrupt team fights with his ult very effectively. I would love to see him get some buffs or see the items that he builds get buffs so I can put him up in this higher category, but we've got to put him in the lower end picks. Just feels like he can't compete in solo lane with how good the other solo lane options are, and he can't compete in jungle with how fast some of these other junglers get rolling. So if you're coordinated with your team and they plan for it to be a really late game, maybe you took 2 carries and he's your jungler or something like that, he can be good, but just a lower end pick at the end of the day. Shinbi, I'll say Shinbi is a consistent performer, although I've never had good success with her. She definitely has the potential to harass people in solo lane, but you know, if you build against her early, you can counter quickly. The wolves aren't too hard to dodge, and her clear is very good, and her mobility is very good, her shiftiness, but it neither doesn't bring any sort of crazy CC to the table or anything like that. Just a big burst mage type solo laner. But it can catch people out, can do a lot of damage in team fights, and can get in and out of team fights quickly with her little dash. So a consistent performer, but not someone I would say is above average compared to her competition. Twin Blast. Twin Blast does not fit this meta nearly as well as he has before, but we're going to put him in the B tier, above average, which is funny because I think that means every carry is essentially above average except for, you know, Wraith or Revenant if you want to consider him. But he definitely is, he's up here for sure with Kira and Murdoch in my opinion. Easy to play, one of the best mobilities at the carry role, good harassment in lane with his poke from his grenade. His ultimate has good range and does good damage. You can engage with it, you could try to finish people with it. You have multiple good build options with him. I definitely don't mind the ability Twin Blast build, but right now you're probably still going on hit. If it pans out here in a couple weeks that crit is just that strong and crit is the must go to build, then he definitely would be in a lower tier because he's not one you want to build crit on. He's not nearly on the level of Drongo or Sparrow right now. So we'll leave him in the above average category just because he's so easy to play and get good value out of with his mobility and his slows, AoE slows from the grenades and team fights. You're going to get good value out of him almost every time. So above average pick. And then finally Argus. I would say we're going to say Argus is in the lower end picks. Argus, he got some buffs recently. He can play mid lane effectively, and if he gets ramped up before the other mid laner, he can just start deleting people with his great range. And he can play support effectively with the stun. I mean, that's where everybody was playing him, and that's probably where most people are still playing him in support. But similar to these other options that we see down here in these lower categories, you've just got to look at his competition. I mean, in mid lane, unless you're just exceptionally good with him, like he was in this one trick or situational category, unless you're just exceptionally good with him, he's not going to outperform the CC potential of Faye. He's not going to outperform the damage potential in a short burst of somebody like Gideon, and he can't keep up with sustained damage in a team fight as long as somebody like Iggy and Scorch can. And he's not that easy to use or manage, so just a lower end pick at the end of the day. Probably still good in support, but I mean, the same thing goes when you're thinking about picking him in support. He's not going to have the consistency of Decker with all of her abilities and CC. He's not going to have the frontline presence at all of somebody like a Steel or a Terra. So, and then he's not going to have the pure support potential of a Phase to keep your carry alive better or buff your carry up any. So just a lower end pick, but for sure a hero that could receive a couple more buffs and then skyrocket in the tiers because has a lot of potential in his kit. So that's going to do it for our tier list. We'll go through here and see if there's anyone we want to move around. S tier. I think this is a pretty clean S tier. I think the only one you maybe would make an argument for dropping out would be Morgash because of just how balanced most of the mid laners are. But and you could make an argument for Chimera coming out because he can get deleted, but in the Bronze 1 range and in casual matches, he's not getting deleted. He's steamrolling. A tier, we've got some of the top performers here. Yeah, no, I like all of this in A tier. Mixture of players that aren't too hard to play and that you're consistently going to get a lot out of. B tier, you know, pretty standard above average player heroes. heroes that don't maybe bring something that's so exceptional to the game that you must plan on picking them, or that have something very special about them. I would say the only ones you could make an argument for moving up is probably Quang or FaZe. But I wouldn't put Quang on the category of Grux, Zarus, or even Steel in solo lane. Maybe he's on par with Steel in solo lane. But FaZe, yeah, FaZe definitely isn't on the category of Decker. Decker could probably be moved up to S tier realistically, because there is a big gap between Decker and FaZe, I would say most of the time. Twin, Seraph, Kira. Twin, definitely tempted to move him down here. Yeah, we'll move Twin down here in the consistent performer. He is very good, but I never really see him get as out of hand as he used to in the pre-on-hit meta, the more ability-based meta. I don't think he's quite on the level of Murdoch or maybe Kira, but he's definitely close. He's definitely top end of C tier. Just a consistent performer, not an above average performer by any means. And then in the consistent performer category, tempted to move Countess up here. Yeah, we'll move Countess up. I would consider her above average now that she's got some buffs. Still not someone you want to play in mid lane unless you're just really good with her, but a threat. For sure a threat. When I see a Countess, it is something to be worried about in this current meta, just the same way as I'd worry about a Gadget or a Howitzer for sure, or a Seraph coming out of the jungle on me. So Countess has got to move up there. And then lower end picks, yeah, Rampage, Sevrog, Argus, One Tricks, Richter. As far as One Tricks go, I'm actually going to just move Richter into the lower end picks. Yes, his pull can completely change the game, but everything else you're just kind of avoiding him. You know, he doesn't have that much pressure in lane. You know, when you compare him to his competition, it's just not there. And then One Tricks, yeah. Kalari. I mean, honestly, it feels like it's been a while since I've seen a FaZe go off or a Wraith go off and really carry anyone into a big game win. And Kalari, kind of the same way. I would say Kalari is a character that needs buffs, but the problem is you buff her too much and then she becomes unstoppable. So we'll leave her in the One Trick situational because she can one-shot people. And then down here at the end, Belica definitely needs some buffs, or just a change. Maybe one of her abilities need reworked or something. Some sort of change to her kit to make her better. Her ult's good and all, but it just doesn't bring that much to the table. So that's going to do it for our tier list. Feel free to comment and disagree because your main is in the lower end picks category or not in the above average category or whatever it may be. Feel free to tell me that all these S tier picks are complete garbage and that you smash them every single game and they're never a problem for you. Or feel free to tell me that Belica is the best hero in the game. I'd love to hear what you guys have to say in the comments. I'll message you back or I'll comment back and we can talk about where we think these heroes are, what they bring to the table, and how their performance stacks up against each other. But thanks for watching. I did yap a lot in this video, so it went a little longer than I was expecting. Glad I front-loaded it with those top 4 picks, and I'm very happy to see this A tier came out really good, because I am happy to see any of these picked on my team. And I would say all these are above average for sure. Kira and Twin Blast are very close. I will say that. And Seraph has a lot of competition at her roles, but I think this is as close as I can get it to a tier list for the Bronze 1 range. We'll see what we can do. I'll put up I'll zoom out and get a screenshot of this exact size, and I'll put it up on the screen here for the closing sequence. So thanks for watching, guys. We will see you on the next one. Whenever another update comes out, and here in about a month, we'll take a look at this, and we'll pull this this list back up and see where we want to move people around. But thanks for watching. We will catch y'all on the next one.